Welcome to the Co-Authoring Chronicles podcast, 2 voices, 1 tale.
Hello, everyone. I'm Helen Corvis, and I'm here with my co-author.
It's Steaphan. How's everyone doing?
So we hope everyone's doing as well as you possibly can. And today we are putting a second podcast in our series called The Demise of Vella. Bum, ba, bum. Do you want I want you to know we worked very hard on those special effects. Of course, what we're referring to is the impending shutdown of Kindle Vella. Do you remember the date on that when they're finally
I think the final is like February
Yeah, it
where
is.
everything stops, but there's different levels. Publishing new series is already shut down December 4th for new episodes. So what's left is when people can buy tokens and read. I think the February 2025 date is for the readers to kind of finish up any series they started. But the author submissions shut down well before that.
That's right. So if you listen to our previous episode, we made some recommendations about how you want to finish up, copy your stuff off, and possibly think about where you want to move to. So in part of that series, we are discussing today serial fiction and novels. And the reason we're covering this is before we want to choose a new platform or where we might want to go, it's important to just revisit what kind of format that we're interested in. Now, today we're not really choosing one over the other, though, of course, I think Stefan and I probably have a preference. But we just want to touch a little bit on serial fiction and also novels. What do you think, Stefan? Did I cover everything?
Yes, and you made a good point in the pre-recording, is that we have distinct viewpoints on that because your full writing experience professionally, please correct me, for fiction is in the serial venue. And with me, it started out with novels and then doing both novels and serial fiction.
Yeah, that's right. So inherently, I'd have to admit I have a bias on this just because of how I've shaped my experience. And of course, even more than that, I've only ever really done serial fiction as a co-authorship with Stefan, so I'm even I'm even more biased towards that. So, but let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, serial fiction. So hopefully at this point, everyone should somewhat be familiar with serial fiction. It's a way of publishing your story in a series of episodes, so to speak, in a serialized format. Very much like some of the initial sci-fi greats who used to publish chapters or small components of ongoing stories via magazines. So that's serial fiction, and uh, and we want to say, if you're thinking about serial fiction, here's a couple of highlights and lowlights about it that I've personally really enjoyed. So what I'd like to start out with is the chance to really get a story out there and publish it in a small, discrete chunk. And what I feel that allows you to do is, first of all, there's a kind of a low barrier, right? It doesn't feel like I have the tremendous weight of having to produce an entire work on me. I can really, I don't want to call it compartmentalizing, but I can view my goals as being achieved by being able to produce that one small unit of work. And for me, in a motivational perspective, that makes a huge difference mentally.
Yeah, if you listen to author podcasts and authors and had conversations with them, you will know that first novel is the bane of every fledgling and experienced author's existence is that first novel, getting all that work done for especially, when you talk about fantasy, which could be 100,000 plus words, it's a lot of work. And so serial fiction makes that a lot easier because you don't have to consider 100,000 words to get done for your very first thing. You can write 500 or 800 or 1,000 words and publish. So it's a lot different from a motivation slash can I do this kind of viewpoint.
Mhm. And the other thing about it is when you do publish, you do get that chance at feedback. Now, there's no guarantee that people will flock to your serial, but I think if you establish yourselves, you got some great odds. And it's a nice way to get immediate feedback and engage with your audience, and allows you to make some changes or think through how you want to implement maybe the next episode or the one after that. So that's also another nice thing about the idea of serial fiction, is that what I find, even in the course of writing it, is it's not just feedback, but it also, in a way, prevents me from going back and retooling and retooling and retooling and getting stuck, like revamping my words. It's published, it's out there. I've got to accept it and go on and write the next episode. And I know I've probably conflated a couple of points with that statement, but that's definitely, to me, one of the other nice things about publishing in that discrete format, is that you have to go forward. It
Mhm.
kind of it takes a burden off of me, I guess, mentally.
Yes, and when you write novels, you might maybe have like a very early street team or an ARC team, review readers, beta readers, but in most cases, that doesn't happen until you have a draft complete. You don't get that feedback, and if you're like me, I have this very severe, I don't want to call it a block, but I really do not enjoy editing. If I could write a whole novel once and it was edited that one pass, I would love that. But of course, we don't get to do that. You don't get the feedback. And with serial fiction, if that is a style of publishing, a venue that you like doing, you get that feedback. You can change your story mid flight if you so desire, based on what your audience saying. You can even craft your story specifically. I've heard contests or where authors say something like, "Subscribe to my serial fiction," and the first 10 people will get their name as a character, or some other aspect where the readers get a contribution in the actual story itself.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's a nice way to engage. Um, I'm trying to think of anything else. Was there anything else I'd highlight about? Was there anything else you would highlight about serial fiction?
We talked about it last time, but the different monetization schemes, you're talking more of a micropayment format. Some people would say payments for novels are micropayments as well, but not quite, but definitely so with the serial fiction. So depending on how you're operating your business and what you need for a revenue stream, of course, highly successful anything will make it a lot easier. So highly successful, you have hundred thousands of readers in your show fiction, things are fine. But if not, you have to look at that from a monetary standpoint.
So, with that being said, I'd also like to move towards the idea of what it is about a novel that we want to highlight when you choose to write that. And I know this is not necessarily going to be my viewpoint because I've never written a whole novel, but I find the idea and the dream to be very compelling, right? There's something about the idea of having an entire work, an entire world that you've created right there in one go, that actually let Stefan make the first point for novels.
Novels, yes. Well, we've spoken about this in the past, but the idea in the olden days, and by that I mean 10 years ago, maybe, in indie publishing, it was kind of like, oh, if you're traditionally published, you're a real author. And if you don't traditionally publish, you're just a hobbyist, or a lot of other negative comments, right? And that's not the case in today's world. Indie authors are the lion's share over traditionally published. Some statistics out there show that indie authors are generating more revenue and making more money nowadays than traditional authors. But we're not here to throw around that and controversial those controversies. But what I will say is that writing a novel and publishing it establishes your author brand in a say stronger way. That's not the right word,
I
but
would say it's very concrete, right? It's because it is a very understood method of publishing that once you say I've written a novel, like it's very clear. There's no detracting from that.
you know,
Which I can understand because as a reader, I will tell you one of my, and I know other people who feel this way, I actually don't enjoy works in progress, which I know is kind of unfair as somebody who also loves writing serial fiction. But as a reader, my preference is actually to purchase entire complete books. Some of my favorite books recently have been from indie authors, and once they've actually captured the entire story and put it all together, that's when I buy. So I do think there is a certain segment of the audience also that corresponds to that paradigm.
that's a very good point. Taking it seriously, but also there's more mechanisms available to authors that write novels and publish them than there are for serial fiction. For example, some of the author membership organizations only accept authors that have published novels or short stories, which don't include serial fiction, like the Alliance of Independent Authors. Authors have steep author revenue requirements that may be difficult to achieve with serial fiction. So, that, of course, that wouldn't work if you're only writing serial fiction. So, if you wanted to participate, things like that, author brand, in the very beginning of Vella, you couldn't publish and have your author name on their author central, which is when you go to click and you can see details about an author. I think that happened after the fact. So, really limiting the branding of an author. Also, there's many author databases and library sites like WorldCat, which is a place where your books are published in their database for libraries. So you know where your readers can find you. Obviously, your serial fiction is not going to be in library. Well, that's to a lot of authors. That's critical. To have their works in a library. That's the ultimate. You know, longevity, have your books in the library. So there's lots of things like that. And there's just also what I was going with really, and I didn't use the word, but I guess I should, is the vanity publishing part of it. A lot of people want books published because it's a goal of theirs. They want it to tell everyone I published a book. No, I'm not knocking that. Um, it's a
Well, I'm
great
not
joy to
knocking
be.
that either, I gotta say, because that's how I opened. I do wanna
Mm,
publish a book. It is a
mm,
goal of mine, and I love the idea. So, I'm very much in support of that being, like, people's dream.
yeah,
What I would say is if we kind of look at both of them, it's like you can it's not an or. You don't have to write a serial or a novel. I think what's nice is that you can consider them to be different expressions of your dream and you can what we're doing. We started with a serial and we're going to convert it to a novel. And I think some of the things you've highlighted, Stefan, especially about how publishing or marketing can, and I know we've talked about marketing before, sometimes being easier for an entire novel or a series of novels or library of work is that once you have it, it's easier to market towards your audience and, as you said, establish brand. But my point is, you can do both. But I do think it's important to understand if you're going to do both, if you're only going to do one, where you are in that cycle of not just creativity, but also how you're going to operate on a weekly basis. And as you mentioned, how you want to run your business. We're not just writers, we're trying to run a business as well. So you need to know what you're doing.
yeah, perfectly said. And I think that's all I have to say on the topic.
Awesome. So that's it for today. I'm gonna try to steal the ending from Stefan, but that's it for today. But hopefully you'll listen for our next episode on this series about the demise of Vella, where we'll talk about some various platforms that we're considering, and you should too. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. You can help others find us by rating this show, leaving a review, or sharing a link. We invite you to read our serial fiction, In the Arms of the Void, available on Kindle Vella.